Thanks for tuning in. I'm your host, Andy Zopp, and this is Chicago Newsroom 2.0. On this week's Roundtable segment, Tracie Hall, Daniel Ash, Ron Holmes, and Mike Nellis joined me to discuss Project 2025, the 900-plus page conservative Republican plan which, if implemented, will dramatically change government as we know it and dismantle American democracy. I'll also sit one-on-one with Chicago Public Library Commissioner Chris Brown to discuss One Book, One Chicago, and UCAN CEO and President Christa Hamilton discussing her first 3 years leading one of the city's largest human services organizations. We'll get started on the other side of a short break. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Ashley Munson, inviting you to join me and my Chief of Staff, Justin James, and the No Name Band for Munson Tonight, with guest Tanika Lewis-Johnson and Alderman Will Hall. Join the conversation Thursday, September 26th at 7 p.m. on CAN TV Cable Channel 19 or stream live on cantv.org. Hyper local news and public affairs experience the power of community television.
23 years ago, Chicago Public Library made history with the first ever citywide reading program. And since then, One Book, One Chicago has been uniting our city through stories. Joining me today to discuss One Book, One Chicago and other incredible programs happening at the Chicago Public Library is CPL Commissioner Chris Brown. Welcome back to the newsroom.
Thanks
Chris,
for having us.
nice to see you. So first of all, let's just start with for our viewers who haven't heard, can't believe so, but who haven't heard of One Book, One Chicago. What is the program about, and what are you guys hoping to accomplish with it?
Well, it's our citywide read. It's every year this opportunity to bring the whole city of Chicago together to read one book, and not just to have a reading experience that we share, but to have a chance to connect through author visits, through workshops, through events, film screenings, and we have over 23 years where we've been bringing the city together.
Wow. So what are some of the books that have been part of One Book Chicago?
Well, we started 23 years ago with To Kill a Mockingbird. We've had Isabel Wilkerson's book. We just really a list of notable literary greats. And this year is no exception. We're reading Gabrielle Zevin's Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which the New York Times named as one of the top 100 books of the century.
Wow. Tell us a little bit for our readers so they can give them a little taste so they can all get excited to participate.
Well, it's a book about two creatives in the gaming industry. And it's the story about their experience and their journey to create a narrative and story around this video game. And before the book, I didn't realize just how pronounced and powerful the gaming industry has become. Yeah. So the annual revenue from that industry outpaces film and television combined, which is incredible. It's really become a storytelling field.
How long does the One Book, One Chicago program run? So do I have to, if I haven't read the book yet, am I in trouble, or do I have a little bit of time?
So we just kicked off, so you're in good shape. It'll go through December, and then we'll have Gabrielle Zevin, the author, into the Harold Washington Library on November 14th at 6 p.m.
So the last thing I want to, before we quickly run out of time, the last time you were here, we spent some time talking about a tougher topic than we've talked about today, and that is this continued, coordinated, aggressive effort to ban books across the country. And it is, I'm so sad to say, still going on and still a thing. So tell me a little bit about what you're hearing from your fellow librarians.
I think in Chicago we're so fortunate. Yes. We have this community of a city that just uplifts our collective voices. We had Theaster Gates, who created an art installation in the Harold Washington Library, an altar for the unbanned, really a showcasing of all those banned books and materials. But there are librarians, and there are parts of our country where people are under attack. We were talking kind of before the show about Amanda Jones and her new book, That Librarian, where this librarian, in speaking out against banned books, got doxxed, would get death threats, and really she was a industry-leading figure, and is going through all this tumult and really trauma in fighting for simply the freedom to read. So we're lucky, but I think there's many examples that we can point to that show how we have to continue to stay committed.
Right. It is just shocking, really, that people are so committed to preventing other people from reading and learning and having their world expanded. We are shockingly out of time. I'm so glad you came back, Commissioner Brown. It's so great to see you, and I love what you're doing at the library, and thank you for sharing Amanda Jones' books, That Librarian, with us, and I really hope you'll come back again.
Of course.
We'll be right back with this week's Roundtable. While the Supreme Court has been ignoring decades of established law to wipe out previously protected rights for women and minorities, more than 100 conservative groups, led by the Heritage Foundation, have been cooking up a dystopian plan that doesn't bother to veil its goal of gutting America's fragile democracy once and for all. Recently, I sat in conversation with local leaders Tracie Hall, Daniel Ash, Ron Holmes, and Mike Nellis to discuss Project 2025 and the enormous danger it poses to American democracy. Take a look and listen. Joining me to discuss the blueprint for the dismantling of democracy, known as Project 2025, our librarian and 2023 Time 100 honoree, Tracie D. Hall, President of the Field Foundation of Illinois, Daniel Ash, Government and Public Affairs Strategist Ron Holmes, and political pundit and CEO of Authentic, Mike Nellis. Tracie, Dan, Ron, welcome back. Let's go. Let's start with first, for those people who, I don't know, have been living in a cave and don't know what Project 2025 is. Can somebody just give me a little bit of kind of a summary of an idea? Steve, you want to start?
I can go first, but it's actually Mike.
I'm sorry, Mike.
Okay.
I knew that.
No, all good. But Project 2025 is a series of proposals that the former Trump administration officials and other right-wing activists have put together. They call it the blueprint for Donald Trump's second term if he's elected in November. And it's basically the most radical series of proposals that you can imagine. Jim Clyburn called it Jim Crow 2.0 last night. I think that's pretty accurate.
We're going to go with kind of a little bit of a roundtable, and let's get your most scary thing that you think's in Project 2025. Dan?
The most scary?
Well, there's so many, but let's
for me, so the issue around just gutting civil rights and right to choose, things like that are troubling. But even when you double click into it and you see the vision around media, for quite frankly, defunding the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, which some people would see as something that the Republicans always want to do, it's always troubling that they want to sort of redefine and reshape how information is shared in this country. The thing that I walked away with as I was reading some of the headlines around Project 2025 is that while it sets out to dismantle democracy as we know it, what's ironic is that democracy is the thing that's going to actually prevent many of those policies from being implemented.
Mm-hmm. Well, we certainly hope so. Ron, how about you? What bugs you the most? We're going to come back to some of these.
Yeah, I mean, first off, I just think it's absolutely nuts that anyone would write this down in a document, right? But policy-wise, we have a system where right now we've got 3 branches of government. And Donald Trump has said he wants to be a dictator on day one. This plan clearly shows how he wants to dismantle agencies that quite frankly have stood in his way. So DOJ, IRS, Department of Education. And so the idea of consolidating everything under his thumb is very alarming for all of us.
Well, I'll just continue on from there. What has caused me a lot of sleepless nights are the continued attacks on education and, frankly, the anti-intellectual tone of Project 2025. We also see real tight controls and attacks on freedom and learning. So we see, once again, ideas like diversity, equity, and inclusion being made contraband when we think about high school education, K through 6 education, and I could really go on and on. And so it is the anti-intellectualism in Project 2025, and ironically, the way in which it sort of sets up a thought police that is really concerning and very dystopian.
Mike?
It's the attack on fertility rights and access to fertility treatments that really bother me the most. Like, I watched my wife go through hell to have our first son. We named him, and I don't want to say his name on live TV, but his name means gift from God because we were able to have him thanks to IVF and fertility treatments. He is a blessing, right? And to these guys, if it were up to Donald Trump, it was up to J.D. Vance. And by the way, J.D. Vance wrote the foreword to the book that is basically Project 2025. If it were up to them, they would ban or severely restrict fertility rights, and that's not right.
I want to talk about two things there's a couple things that both of you said because they're related. So first, let's talk about the restructuring of the government in a way that puts power into the hands of the presidency. So, all of us learned when we were in, 8th grade. Was it 8th grade when we learned the structure of the government? Right, it's a balanced government. Schoolhouse rocks, right, which would go away because they would defund public broadcasting. So no schoolhouse rock. But that there's 3 branches of government. That the whole point being the government was structured to balance each other, right? And we've already seen some of that kind of slipping away, right? But in the plan actually embeds a lot of power in the presidency and eliminates thousands of protected government jobs. So what are they trying to do here?
Well, look, we've already seen the preview, right? And in 2016, we were warned about what would happen when the Supreme Court got flipped, right? And now Donald Trump's Supreme Court will basically be a rubber stamp to anything that he wants to do. And so in his mind, via executive order, via fiat, he will be able to basically reclassify a number of government employees, declare them to be partisan employees, if you will, and install his own regime of folks. There's a database already of folks that would now be running our federal government that would be completely loyal to Donald Trump. And we've seen what that looks like, right? We've seen the chaos of January 6th. We see this at rallies across the nation. We see this in state houses across the nation. And it is a very scary and troubling thing because all these folks are going to declare loyalty to Donald Trump on day one, and he'll be able to be the dictator that he wants to be.
Right, and the reason it becomes important is that these employees that they're getting ready. There's a whole class of government employees that are protected from politics, right? So that they can be above this, so that they can just come in every day, do their job, right, and not have to worry about it. And they would eliminate thousands of those jobs, and I think that's a huge important part. And also, and this really, Dan, I'm going to come back to you. Goes back to something that you said when you were talking about the attack on media and on the public broadcasting system and education, because an informed electorate is critical to a democracy, right? So if you're going to start pulling democracy apart, it really helps if you undereducate people, right?
Absolutely. When I walked away from reading parts of the 900-page document, I walked away thinking that this is one of the most dehumanizing set of proposals that I've ever read. Because basically we're saying we don't trust the individual to be able to step into the public square, be a participant in civil society, and make choices. So on one hand, there's just a lot of preaching about liberty and individual freedom. But in order to exercise that freedom, we have to have access to information, right? And so we don't trust the American citizen to actually navigate a world that's rich in information and make choices. So the flip side of this, I was sharing with a few colleagues when I was preparing for this show. I kind of like the fact that they published it. It's published. Because again, going back to this point, it creates an opportunity for us to have a clear-eyed understanding of sort of what this administration would do. And again, I work for a foundation. We're nonpartisan, right? But what we advocate for is participation, right? And this is an opportunity. This document is an opportunity for every American citizen to participate. Read the summaries, read the analysis, and use that to make a choice. And most importantly, participating is what's key. So I would actually urge anyone who doesn't like the proposals to actually find the counter proposals. Because they're out there too.
I think this is the most authoritarian document that we have seen probably in generations in America. And it's certainly the most, they said the inside part out loud, which is odd for the Republicans to do. They're usually pretty good at hiding what they want to actually accomplish. But look, at the end of the day, If they get to enact Project 2025, they're going to be able to tell you what the truth is and what the truth's not. They're going to be able to tell you what you can do with your body and what you cannot do with your body, what your family's going to look like and how you're going to have it, and what a family even looks like, right? Yeah. Look at all these dehumanizing attacks on Kamala Harris because she doesn't have biological children. Right. She's every bit as much a mom as anyone else is, whether or not you have it with IVF or adoption or a found family or something like that. But for the Republicans to be so brazen, for Donald Trump to back this up, for the Heritage Foundation to put this plan together, it's disgusting. And to me what it says is they know that there is a large majority of Americans who want to continue to move our country forward, that want to be able to define their families for themselves. And I'm really glad to see the Democratic Party taking back the idea that we are the party of freedom and having this conversation and calling out Project 2025, because these guys don't get to decide what my family looks like and how I can have my kids.
Right. I think that's a real point. And I think, but you did touch on something. You touched on it as kind of a Donald Trump Republican plan, but Trump has been kind of all over the map, right? I support it. Sometimes I don't support it when it's critique. I mean, is this how do we know this is Donald Trump's plan? Because he says, I don't know anything about Project 2025.
Yeah. Well, I think by now, a majority of folks that I talk to know that Donald Trump is a scam artist and a liar. Mm-hmm. And so, he came here to NABJ not too long ago and said he knew nothing about the Massey shooting. This is a guy that you can't trust. You've seen 4 years of his work. You've seen him out on the trail, and more importantly, you see folks that have worked for him and foundations that support him putting their name on this plan, saying that this is ours. And so he may try to distance himself. I think the questions that the press will have to ask over the next 60, 70 days or so will be point by point. Where are you on these issues? And see where he is. And I guarantee you on most of them, he's going to come out in a quiet room somewhere and say that he's for it. I mean, we're certainly seeing that with J.D. Vance as well.
Right. Yeah, I would do want to just say one thing that, it's just under my skin a bit. And I think someone needs to speak to this. We are going to have to wrestle the notion of spirituality and religion and even Judeo-Christianity away from the far right. Because unless people are just reading strictures only in the Old Testament, we have an entire Bible in which the latter half is dealing with this notion of liberatory theology and really dealing with this idea of what we would probably call today sort of an anti-capitalist approach to community building and to just spirituality in general that is not mediated by people who would set themselves up to be quote unquote Pharisees. I say this because, I was raised in a family that was quite religious, and reading the Bible was, mandatory. And I know large portions of the Bible that I can probably repeat, but I just want to say that because I do think that there is even this notion of motherhood, right? And what the ideal woman looks like, and what her family looks like. What we had is, we have, and I need to get a cat because I also don't have children, but these childless cat ladies.
I have 4 cats.
You have 4 cats. Can I have one?
Yes.
But
I'm gonna have to get you one of the T-shirts. I think.
But I just want to draw a contrast between, this notion of idyllic womanhood, who is, this mother. We have Usha Vance, who is a mother, but who still isn't the ideal woman. And even, J.D. Vance was called, on to sort of apologize for being married to someone who wasn't white. And so I just want to say that the basket keeps shifting, but I also think that we have to wrestle back these discourses of spirituality, religion, and also what the ideal woman looks like.
Right. Wow. Well, we have only begun to unpack Project 2025, and we are out of time. But your input has been, and your sharing, I really appreciate this. What I would tell our audience is, go get a summary of it. It's a long document if you don't want to read the whole thing, but read it. If you care about this country and the way we live now, take some time to read it so you understand, as Dan said, our choices. Thank you so much for being here with us. Sincere thanks to Tracie, Daniel, Ron, and Mike for sharing your invaluable insights. On the other side of the break, I'll be back with a bonus one-on-one segment featuring UCAN President and CEO Christa Hamilton. Stay with us.
Hi, I'm Bianca Cotton. Join me Mondays at 7 p.m. for Behind the Confident Smile as I sit in conversation with incredible, dynamic, and complex Chicagoans who peel back the layers, living lessons, the joy, and the pain behind their confident smiles. You can watch on CAN TV 19, cantv.org, and CAN TV Plus app.
In September of 2021, Christa Hamilton was named CEO and president of UCAN. It's been 3 years since her appointment, and she's here with us to talk about the journey that has been leading one of the city's preeminent human services organizations. Christa, welcome back to the show.
Hi, Andy.
Nice to see you again. I'm excited to talk. So first, before we start, just to level set, because I'm hoping maybe we have some new viewers since the last time you were here. Let's talk a little bit about what is UCAN. A little bit, it has a long history here in Chicago, so talk about the history and the mission of the organization.
Absolutely. So UCAN is, we are 155 years old. We started off as an orphanage for kids who were dislocated from their families during the Civil War. So 155 years later, we're really proud that we still take care of kids that have been displaced from their families. Half of our portfolio works with the Department of Children and Family Services. So we have foster care programs, residential programs, and transitional living programs. I think now we're up to about 600 kids across the state of Illinois that we're taking care of. And, and hopefully that we'll get them back home safely or find their forever home. Right. The other part of our work are all the complementary services that go along with those kids and their families. So workforce development, youth development, behavioral health. We have 2 therapeutic day schools. We have just, we are always looking at ways in our violence prevention work to support the community and the families. So we're a very responsive organization. If we find a need or a gap of service in a community that we serve, we try to find ways to be innovative and support them.
Wow. And your primary location is on the near west side, right? Or on the west side?
So our headquarters is in North Lawndale.
Right, exactly.
So we have a beautiful campus in North Lawndale, but we actually have 16 locations across the city of Chicago.
I see, I didn't know that. Wow. So you just, as I noted, September 2024 is 3 years in the role.
Yes.
So tell us, how's it been? First, let's tell us some of the most exciting, upbeat moments, and then I want to hear some of the surprise things you didn't expect. But let's start off with exciting things.
The exciting things. So in the last 3 years, we've grown our employee head count by over 200.
Wow.
So when I entered the organization, we're about 500 employees. Now we're up to 700 employees, which is a big deal. That means we're serving more people in more places. And it really does my heart well to employ individuals that are from the community. To watch them have successful careers. So that is one thing that I'm really proud of. And then I've been able over the last year to bring some of my own signature programs to the organization. I started off in nonprofit and workforce development. So that's really near and dear to me all the time, I look at workforce development as the exit point for social services. Right. So growing our workforce development department, UCAN focused primarily on young people when I started. So for the last 3 years, we have evolved and we've brought on more adult-focused programs. So now we can not only help the young people, but now we can help their family members and other community members. Right. The thing that I'm most proud of so far is our SHERO program. So our SHERO program is an anti-violence program for women specifically. And why that means so much to me is because the last 10 years I've worked in the violence prevention space, but primarily with men. Mm-hmm. And obviously men are the highest rate of victims and perpetrators of violence. But I think what we can't ignore is the level of, or the amount of women that are increasingly becoming more victims and perpetrators of gun violence. And then also how it impacts them when the males in their families or their homes are impacted by gun violence. months. So the Shero program has been in existence for 1 year. We've served about 75 women, and it is a mind, body, and soul approach. So we're taking them to an extent through an intensive case management program, and the outcome is most times, for most women, is employment or education, which we think that, changing the trajectory for a woman will change the family and impact the community.
Wow, that's terrific. So new leader in our last few minutes here, as a new leader, you're not new anymore, 3 years. So tell us what's been the surprise or something you wish you knew when you started.
You know what? I think the visibility of the role. I was previously a CEO at another organization, Centers for New Horizon in Bronzeville. And I was there for 7 years as the CEO. And, I think I just worked, I had my head down in the sand, working hard, and I really was focused on impacting the community and growing the organization. So some of the amazing opportunities, like sitting here with you today, being very visible in the community, I knew that this appointment as the first African-American woman at this organization, I know it was a big deal for the organization, but I didn't understand that it was a big deal for the city of Chicago. So I'm glad I did know that, because if I would have known it,
you've been more nervous?
I've been more nervous. I'm more of a behind-the-scenes type of gal. So I'm glad I did not know it, but it did, it was a growth opportunity for me to be able to come from behind the scenes a little bit more and kind of take the stage in some situations. That's necessary for me to do on behalf of the organization.
And to continue to grow it. And so, as I said, our time here is going to go super fast, but I'm glad we got to share. And first of all, congratulations
Thank
on
you, Andy,
3
so
years
much.
and what you've accomplished in growing and serving our young people and changing their lives and their families' lives. Really appreciate it. Thank you for being here, Christa.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
I'll be right back with my final thoughts on the other side of this short break. Stay with us.
I'm Ricky Watson, and I'm inviting you to join me for the new UCAN TV original program, Critical Conversations. Each month, I'll share space with special guests who, like you and me, are on their journey of self-discovery and deeper understanding. Join the conversation on UCAN TV, cable channel 19, or stream live on cantv.org or on the UCAN TV Plus app. Elevated conversation and storytelling. Experience the power of community television.
Directly following the airing of Chicago Newsroom 2.0 on Sunday, September 22nd at 12:30 p.m. and Wednesday, September 25th at 7:30 p.m., the UCAN TV special report, Project 2025, Democracy Dismantled, will premiere. Hosted by Tracie D. Democracy Dismantled pulls back the pages of Project 2025. Take a look.
Project 2025 represents a complete restructure of the American government system.
Project 2025 assumption is that the president has something called unitary executive authority. This gives him enormous untested powers to essentially do whatever he wants.
I will immediately reissue my 2020 executive order restoring the president's authority to remove rogue bureaucrats, and I will wield that power very aggressively.
We are now playing defense with whether it be the DEI or just really attacks on the family.
Is your organization going to accept the results of the 2024 election, regardless of the outcome?
Yes, if there isn't massive fraud like there was in 2020.
The extreme MAGA Republican agenda is to jam Trump's Project 2025 down the throats of the American people.
I encourage you to watch Project 2025, Democracy Dismantled. Knowledge is power, and this is information you need to know to be empowered as we quickly approach this very, very important election. Thank you for joining me today. Until next time, be well and well informed.